All right, man. So it looks like we got some absolutely huge news here from Rasmussen. Now, all of you guys know Rasmussen, right? It is the blatantly, brazenly Republican poll. There are a bunch of other ones also right now as well, especially a lot of the 2022 ones. So keep your eye out for names like Trafalgar and Patriot Polling and Coefficient and those kinds of pollsters. Rasmussen is kind of the classic Republican pollster. So they publish their polls that they have. Typically, you'll see like once a week or once every 2 weeks there'll be one dropped. In fact, there was a trend happening between those. I should have brought it up for you. But it went from like +7 Trump to +5, then +4, then +3, then +2, then +1. But then it somehow went back up to +2, even though Kamala Harris is actually hitting new highs and she keeps surging in polls. It's very bizarre. I think they just wouldn't let her take the lead in the poll. But there's something separate that Rasmussen actually has, which is called their daily tracker polls. So every day they do some small sample size of some 400 people, I think nationwide, and they get their numbers. So let's go ahead and check out what's going on in the daily tracker, and let's see what's actually happened to these numbers. So we could see is we could have the dates here on the left side. So in July, it was Trump by 16 on the 23rd. On the 24th, it was 6. On the 25th, it was -3. Already, you can see a lot of variance going on with these numbers already. If you think of each sort of margin as sort of a random variable, like E of x squared minus E of x squared is massive, right? And then you have, August 26th, 1, 2, 2, 4, -1, -1, 6. All of a sudden, Trump goes up to 6 when Harris is up 1. How? And then up by 1, then 6, then 3, then 0, then 5, then 0, then 6, and then a jump to -6 for Trump, which means a 6-point lead for Kamala Harris. So as Kamala Harris is now surging to record highs in multiple different polls, in the Harris X poll, we have the first Harris X poll ever that has actually showed in the 2024 election cycle a Democrat actually leading. Morning Consult poll also rising to a new high. They're now +6. So we have multiple pollsters actually reaching new highs. You can check out the video that I had just uploaded on that. Multiple pollsters reaching new highs. Now we also have the Rasmussen daily tracker showing a new high. This is crazy. So the highest lead prior to this that Kamala Harris at any point ever held was actually on July 25th, which was a 3-point lead. Again, the fact that on the 23rd of July, the tracker poll had it as 16 plus for Trump, and then 2 days later, he's down 3. I think a compromise I'd be willing to actually make with conservatives is, listen, if you guys want to come to the table and basically agree, hey, Rasmussen is a horrible pollster, I'm willing to come to the table with you and agree. We could just throw it in the dumpster can because we could see the Mo is ±5% the margin of error. Yet somehow you have that large of a flip, a 19-point flip in 2 days. Impossible, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, was it Vegeta that said, impossible, right? But we could see, not only is there a 6-point lead for Kamala Harris, what's the phrase we always use? Say it right now. Say what the phrase is. Cracking 50. Is Kamala Harris cracking 50? The answer is yes. She is cracking 50. So not only is it a fat margin of 6 points, which is huge, a 6-point margin in the national polls is definitely pretty much going to win you the election probably. It would be a small victory. I don't think there's any way to get a large victory in terms of like, oh man, you blast Trump in any of the states. The only real blasters where you can kind of ass blast him is probably Michigan, because that's kind of like a solid blue state. But otherwise, it's going to be pretty difficult, if at all, to win any given state by a lot of votes. It's pretty much impossible with the way things are set up now. But we could see cracking 50 plus a fat margin in the Rasmussen daily tracker. I haven't seen their daily trackers after this because this is the 15th, but there's a lot of backlash, as we're going to see. So what they're going to do is they're going to fix the numbers to basically be better for Trump afterwards. But you can see a 12-point swing in 3 days, which is insane. I mean, it's effectively impossible to swing that much, to go from Trump up 6 to Kamala Harris up 6. And you can look at the graph here too. You can see, you can have Trump and Harris as sort of the blue and red lines. You can see the blue line just absolutely take an absolute huge boost, and then the red line take a massive dip. So again, if conservatives want to come to the table and compromise an agreement, we can say, hey, Rasmussen is garbage, don't take it seriously anymore. I'm right there with you. Let's team up together. But as you can see here, the responses are not super exciting. So, this one says crazy how they can flip so drastically every couple days. I feel like tomorrow might be a slightly different story. 12-point swing is impossible. And then there are other reactions where people are trying to calm people down. Hey, calm down, calm down. These kinds of swings are normal. This kind of thing happens a lot. It's not credible for there to be a 12-point shift in such a short period of time. You need to explain why the findings swing so wildly, or people aren't going to take you seriously. I remember your Biden plus 12 1 month before the 20 election. 5-day rolling average, Trump plus 1. So hey, this one day doesn't look good, so let's take the rolling average. That's what we call copium, is what we call. You're kind of having some bad news, you're trying to figure out a way to rationalize and deal. We call that copium, right? That's called copium. This is peak copium. Someone says this seesaw has become meaningless, going to be different tomorrow. It's definitely going to be different tomorrow, because Rasmussen's going to fix the numbers so that the people aren't so pissed. That poll makes no sense. How could there be a 14-point swing over when so many people absolutely abhor her and have seen through her lies? She lies and plans a desperate and horrible future for anyone not in the 1%. So again, we can see a lot of delusion and insanity. In the polls, Kamala Harris is reaching new highs, and actual credible pollsters, she's actually back up to 3-point lead, which should be larger. The Atlas Intel poll is effing up the actual aggregate. But she's back to her numbers from about 16 days ago. She's been contracting since the 22nd. She reached like 3.6, 3.7. She had gone all the way down to 2.4 on the day after the debate. She's now back up to 3.0. So basically what the impact of the debate is, the debate has either boosted her back to the normal numbers before the contraction, or she's gotten close. But again, I actually don't know how she's not up by more, because if you just take a look at these margins, if you just look at the right side here, the absolute value of any of these polls being less than 4 or 3 is very, very rare. You have this plus 1, and then you keep going, scrolling. You know, there's this plus 3, you know, and then plus 2. And then there's this random Atlas Intel Dookie pollster where it's plus 4 and plus 3, which is insane. You could definitely reject those. And then you have an even here from YouGov, but that's pre-debate. So all of the post-debate numbers, we'll start with the Ledger poll. There's almost none that have an absolute value of less than 3, and also a few that have it less than 4. So how that averages out to 3, I'm not exactly sure. It seems kind of on the low end. Probably the Atlas Intel poll that's doing it. But a lot of people getting pissed off. So this guy says, are you guys polling just at the White House, or other people too? Are you being paid off to sell the narrative that this race is close, because it isn't? And so there's a bunch of these people. So this one's saying each day is less than 400 people, so you're going to have a ton of noise. There's a lot of people saying it's going to be high variance. You know, if you're looking at the variance, you know, the sample size is going to be in the denominator n. So it's like as n goes larger, you know, the denominator gets larger, which makes the numbers smaller. So that's what a lot of people are also coping with. A lot of people coping, you know, with the 4 to 5% margin of error. How is there a 12% swing over such a short period of time? And so you have, you know, WTF, a lot of this kind of stuff. This graph is a complete joke. There's just so much of the 12-point swing. What happened? It's just a lot of people the numbers are too volatile to be reliable. There's just a lot of people who are really going off. A lot of people who are just really losing their minds, who are conservatives, because they're looking at this like, man, what on earth is happening? So pretty much what they're doing is, anytime the numbers don't look good, you know, you can see, okay, I cannot trust your data any longer. It's all over the place. So again, I'm willing to come to the table and be fine with this. So if conservatives want to come to the table and agree and say, hey, Rasmussen is T-Rash, I'm totally good. Let's come to the table. Let's break bread together and say, fuck Rasmussen, because they are garbage. I'm totally down to agree with you on that. So if we can get conservatives to agree on that, this may be one of the rare areas where we actually have agreement. Because as you can see, the variance of like this random variable, if you want to consider, like, we'll consider the margin to be like a random variable, not even like the individual polling numbers. Or you could just call it Z or whatever, and it's a difference between X and Y, where X is Harris's number and then Trump is Y, or, you know, Y or whatever. Either way, it's like the variability is too high for it to be taken seriously. It's also a tough thing for me to take favorable polling numbers seriously, because the variance is just so massive. The variance in the national polls is far, far smaller. There's just that dumb Atlas Intel poll that's schmucking up the numbers, but otherwise it's pretty stable in terms of the numbers that is between and where it is. And national polling data and generic ballot polling is typically very accurate in terms of how they go. There's got to be like some kind of central limit theorem, maybe with geographies, because the sample isn't that much larger compared to a lot of the polls, even in the states, will be like 900 voters or whatever. And then most of the national ones are like 1,100 or 1,300, so it's not that much more. So maybe there's some kind of like central limit theorem where like the limit is n tends towards infinity, of like where n is like the number of states, I guess. It gets closer and closer to, you know, being like normally distributed or more accurate. I don't know, but very interesting stuff here nonetheless. We already had reported on this happening last time when Kamala Harris ended up taking a lead. But man, a +6 lead for Kamala Harris in the daily Rasmussen tracker poll. Absolute insanity.